千里之行，始于足下。A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Eric Lin, where we take a deep dive into the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. I would like to extend a warm welcome to you. Thank you for joining us. I would like to invite you to center your thoughts and direct your attention to this moment in time, to the here and now, to be fully present and mindfully aware as we all ready ourselves for this sacred process in the Tao with one another. So without further ado, let us continue with chapter 11. As we discussed previously, the title for this chapter is The Empty Center. The emptiness of the Tao is the central theme of this chapter. And it is also the most important point, especially toward the end. And when we talk about the center, it's the core of your being. It is where your spirit resides. And let's take a quick look at the chapter itself. As you can see, it is a relatively short chapter, 8 lines. And when we went through our sectional analysis, we were able to divide it up in this manner. There's the first set of 3 couplets, 2 lines each, from line 1 to line 6. And then the concluding lines, 7 and 8. And we're able to see that the first 6 lines have a structure to them just by identifying this structure where you can see line 2, line 4, and line 6 have many repeating characters. They're translated the same way, and these lines differ in only one character. So by looking for the black character in that line, and then the translation to the right-hand side, you can see where the differing characters are and how they're translated. You've got vehicle, which in ancient times would be a chariot or carriage, a horse-drawn carriage. Then in line 4, you have a container, a vessel, which could be a cup, a glass, a bowl, etc. And lastly, you have the character room. So previously, we covered the first example, which was the wheel with the 30 spokes. Today, we're going to go into the other ones. They reinforce the point that Lao Tzu is trying to make with this chapter, and there's an important correspondence between this chapter 11 with a previous chapter we studied not long ago, and that's chapter 9. So previously, as a quick recap, we started with the discussion about the 30 spokes coming together to the central hub of the wheel. The spokes provide support. They give the wheel its shape, and they represent substance. Each spoke has a part, has an equal contribution to maintaining the overall structure of the wheel. Then the hub, as Lao Tzu pointed out, is central and of central importance. And this is a pattern that sages see as something that they note in life. And the example that we talked about previously was the emperor or the king being surrounded by advisors and ministers. So those advisors and ministers will act as the spokes, all joining together to the hub, which is the ruler. And to continue on, emphasizing the importance of the central hub, we noted last time that, hey, the spokes can be damaged. Some of them can be broken off, but the wheel can still function. And we know that if enough of the spokes, of the many spokes, are damaged, the wheel can be reduced in effectiveness. It cannot roll as quickly or it will break apart, so it has to slow down. Now, the hub, on the other hand, there's just one central hub. If it is damaged, if it cannot hold the axle, then that wheel cannot function, period. No matter how many spokes are still in good working order. So all of the spokes may be functional, but without a working hub, there is no wheel. So, and that's why we say the hub is crucial to the carriage. The emptiness, the hole in it, is crucial to functionality. And that's a general principle that's applicable to different areas of life. So these are the recap for last time. And I think we are now ready to move on to new material. Line 3, mix clay to create a container. Now, the ancients, from thousands of years ago, they were already skilled with earthenware, stoneware, and ceramics. They were able to create what they needed out of the raw material from the earth. Now, the earliest pottery was created way before the writing of the Tao Te Ching. We know the Tao Te Ching was written roughly 2,500 years ago. The history of pottery is well before that, 20,000 years ago. So by the time of the Warring States, during the time of Lao Tzu, it is just like chariots or horse-drawn carriages. Clay containers were commonplace. Everybody knew what they were. And using the wheel and using the clay container, these are very typical for Tao sages. They emphasize everyday examples because these are things that everybody can identify with. And they point to a very practical, down-to-earth kind of emphasis in the Tao, because the Tao was always meant to be a guide for everyday living. It never was just a philosophy for contemplation. Now, I say that in a rather casual way, but some may be surprised to learn that this can be controversial, that there are people who insist upon seeing the Tao as just a philosophy for contemplation. So for that reason, in the West, sometimes I do hear from people who strongly disagree about the Tao as something used for practical, everyday applications. They may say that, well, the Tao means the path, the way, or the nature of the universe or existence. One can only follow the path or harmonize with the Tao. You don't apply a path. You don't apply the nature of the universe. Well, it's a rather narrow perspective that does not take into account that traditional Tao cultivators in the East have always talked about applying the Tao and have always applied the Tao in their lives. In terms of Eastern languages, very commonplace, they may say 运用,使用. These are just different terms for applying the Tao. And yes, they associate the term with the Tao itself. All they really mean is applying the principles that we learn from observing nature. Nature is synonymous with the Tao itself. The principles that they observe from nature, that they apply, will be principles like balance, like using the soft to overcome the hard. They will see how nature will eliminate the excess and then fill up on the lacking to attain balance. So then they try to apply that to life and do the same thing. This is the way it has always been, generation after generation, for all the centuries since the time of Lao Tzu and before. It is exactly what we mean when we say walk the path or harmonize with nature. We mean apply the Tao. Most people who have studied martial arts or maybe practice Tai Chi, whether they're in the East or West, they grasp this idea immediately. For them, it's obvious because they can feel it. They can feel the application of the Tao in their movements. They don't see any problems thinking about it this way. Indeed, they benefit greatly from applying the Tao, and that is what I hope we will also do. Line 4, in its emptiness, there is the function of a container. So we're talking about the clay containers now. The emptiness of the container is what makes it useful, so that it can contain. We can say its most important part is the part that does not exist, the emptiness that the clay pot or container encloses. Now, the substance of the container, the material that goes into making it, that's important because it is what shapes the container, but then the emptiness plays a part too. Here I have a beautiful bowl. To signify that, we have the material of the bowl surrounding the emptiness within so that we can put things in it. It can be perhaps a bowl of rice, perhaps a bowl of soup, or whatever you prefer. So when we look at it that way, it seems rather obvious. Moving on, the container can be a metaphor for the mind. Now, if this sounds familiar, it is because we encounter this very concept in Tao Te Ching 9. In that chapter, it said, holding a cup and overfilling it cannot be as good as stopping short. When we explored those lines, we talked about how that was a metaphor for the mind. So, same thing here. The substance of the container, the bowl itself, the material that goes into making the bowl, one must master the basics to build higher levels of learning. What I mean by that is if you think about the bowl as the mind, the substance, the bowl itself, well, that's the prerequisites. That's the fundamental, the basic level of knowledge you need as a foundation to build on so that it can contain more things, which is the food for consumption, food for thought. So as an example, in order to study English literature, you must have a basic grasp of English grammar, syntax. You must have an adequate vocabulary. It only makes sense. Then the emptiness. Well, mentally, one must have a receptive frame of mind to absorb new ideas. That seems basic and easy to understand. The emptiness of the container, when we say that you must be receptive, it just means that there has to be that emptiness in not assuming you already know everything there is to know about the subject. You must have the willingness to absorb new concepts, consider a new perspective that you have not encountered before. And this, of course, speaks to the point that I just made about people not being open to the idea of applying the Tao. And this is because they're full of the preconception that because Tao is a philosophy for contemplation, of course, it cannot be infused, meaning applied, in everyday situations that we come across all the time. So moving on, we're going to explore another metaphor that Lao Tzu has presented. Line 5 says, cut open doors and windows to create a room. So if you think about the room itself as a large container of people, container of furniture, container of activities, you can map the clay container, the vessel, into the room. The substance, the material for the bowl, the vessel, the container will be the walls of the room. So that seems easy. Now, the space within the room would then logically map to the space in the cup or the bowl. That's the living space inside the room. So you've got the space enclosed by the walls, but that is not enough. This third example from Lao Tzu, the last example, actually goes another step further than either the wheel or the cup, because it's talking about emptiness in two different ways. The emptiness, meaning room, the free space inside the room that you can use. But then there's also emptiness in terms of opening in the wall. So opening in the wall is what you need to create a door. So you can access the room and utilize the room for a particular purpose. So one opening in the wall, at least one way to access the room, that is the minimal requirement. And from experience, we know that there are some containers that have openings in its material as well, like a spout, so that you can open it to pour liquid out, as an example. So that would be like the door being mapped to that in this example. And Lao Tzu also mentioned you must cut another opening, at least another opening, to have a window. And the room can work as an enclosed space, but a window will provide ventilation and light, thus making the room a good room to use, a room where you can be productive. So this is a little bit different than the previous example, and it has a number of implications. Emptiness here, which is the character wu, has additional meaning beyond the clay pot. So we know there has to be space in the room in order for it to be useful. And furthermore, there has to be an opening, a door in at least one wall for access, so you can go in and out of it. And we just talked about there has to be an opening, a window in at least one wall for illumination, for light. So the importance of emptiness is even more apparent in this example. And I say that because it isn't just the emptiness inside the room. That's fine, but we need emptiness in the walls as well. That's the whole point. So one thing to note here before we move on further is that the three examples we have just covered, which is wheel, container, and room, of all three, I want to point out two of them are the same or very close to the examples from chapter 9, 2 chapters ago. In that chapter of the Tao Te Ching, we have three examples cited by Lao Tzu. There is the knife that should not be over sharpened. There is the cup that should not be filled to overflowing. And there is the room that if it was full of treasures, it cannot be used as a room. So they were discussed from a different angle. Here, we're talking about substance versus emptiness, whereas in chapter 9, it's all about not doing or having too much. It's basically talking about excess and moderation. So with those three examples and the three here were two corresponding, the best thing we can do is to bring them all together for a holistic view. That would be the most consistent way with how Lao Tzu sees everything with an encompassing perspective. So the way that we can start doing that, we can consider all the ramifications and implications of the three examples right in this chapter. And I have a slide I would like to present to you for doing exactly that. So I want to start with the wheel. And I want to start with the message from Lao Tzu. The spokes support the shape of the wheel. The hole in its center lets it roll. That's what Lao Tzu, that's the main point Lao Tzu was trying to make with that first example. Now, I want to ask everyone to assume the state of mental agility in extending from that and look into real life to think about what else is necessary. Lubricant lets the wheel spin freely. Horses provide speed and stamina for the trip. Let me explain why I bring those up. So these are not mentioned in the chapter at all. However, when we reflect upon it and then think about the real world counterpart to what Lao Tzu is saying, then, of course, we know that lubricating oil can be important to a wheel. It makes the turning of the wheel a lot smoother without squeaky noises. And that turns out to be an idea that we can apply to life too. Another important point to make is that a wheel is insufficient by itself. So it isn't just a carriage that can function with a single wheel. That wheel has to work in conjunction with other wheels. This can be further expanded as a way to say that last time we applied the wheel as metaphoric analogies to different things in life, such as the ruler of a kingdom having ministers and advisors that are like the spokes. Now, going further from that, the ruler of a kingdom the kingdom itself as a wheel, that kingdom must form alliances with other kingdoms, perhaps neighboring kingdoms, for positive, good relationships, commerce, mutual benefit, and protection. Now, going even a little bit further, another step further, the wheels by themselves are also insufficient for the functioning of a carriage or chariot. They need to be pulled or driven either by animal muscle power, like the horse-drawn carriages in the time of Lao Tzu, or the various kinds of engines that we use in modern times. We're also driving, powering, and moving the wheels, just in different ways. When you have all the pieces together that you need, then you get to the functionality that Lao Tzu was talking about. So Lao Tzu says the functionality is dependent on the hole in the hub. And we can see, if we think about it, that it is also dependent on these other elements. The lubricant may not be absolutely necessary, but it certainly comes in handy. And we know that the horses, oxen would be absolutely necessary. And when those pieces are in place, the chariot moves across the land, transporting people or goods quickly and efficiently. Now, we can do the exact same thing with the other two examples as well. So let's talk about the container. So what Lao Tzu says is that, well, the substance or the material gives the container its shape and size. The emptiness in the middle gives it capacity to hold things, to contain things. So again, we can think about a real world scenario when we're actually using containers or vessels, and we can see that there are other elements that become necessary or are usually used together, just like the wheel. There's more that goes into the making and using of containers beyond just the shape and size. So like a lid for the container, it can provide protection for the contents of the container, maybe prevent spillage. If the container has handles on it, we can carry it around more easily. Furthermore, just like a single wheel is not necessarily sufficient by itself, we have also seen how in real life, containers are often used in conjunction with other containers or in conjunction with utensils for full functionality. In a meal, you can expect not just a bowl of rice, but perhaps dishes containing entrees. When all of the elements are working together properly, the cup holds water to slake thirst. In that scenario of drinking water and consuming food, the bowl holds food to satisfy appetite and hunger. The bowl keeps the food warm, and the teacup, keeps the tea hot, and so on. So this is, as you can see, this is corresponding to the different considerations that we put into the first example. Can we do the same for the third example, which is the room? Here's the room. So first, what does Lao Tzu say about the room? Well, the point that Lao Tzu made was that the walls define the dimensions of the room and giving it that space within. But then also, the windows and doors provide light, illumination, and access to go in and out. So that's important too. Now, we can do the same thing as the previous two examples, and we can think about what other elements will be necessary in a real life scenario. So first, we know that we cannot do a whole lot with the room if it is bare. A completely empty room is not a useful room, so we have to furnish it. And once you have something in it, you may want window covering, you may want locks to provide privacy, to control access. And the furniture provide a setting for productivity. It's not just for aesthetics, but for practical reasons. Likely, in the room, we're going to want something like chairs, table, or desk, just for starters. So the room does not exist on its own. There has to be more to make it useful as a room. And when we have all that, when we have the elements together, then we get optimal functionality. The room will let you work in peace and quiet, or when you're taking a break, it will let you rest in comfort. Now, all of this is leading up to life applications. So the bottom row is about you, how we can draw from the top three examples to think about life. So some of this we have already done. And one obvious thing is that when we're talking about substance and emptiness, existence and emptiness, with us, with our life, our existence in this world, we know that we have this physical body. It allows us to exist in this world, to interact with other people and the myriad things that are in it. So the substance is important. The body is important. We need it. Now, humility is where we used emptiness as a metaphor for the heart being empty of arrogance or self-centric notions. That humility provides you with the room, the receptivity, the ability to learn. So right off the bat, we can take that as mapping from the previous three examples to life itself. So what about the real world? So we know the spokes of the wheel for us will be like friends and family. They provide us with the support that we need. And then, as I mentioned, humility is the heart free of self-centric notions that is receptive. But what else is there? In this world of ours, it's not just your family and friends. It's the teeming throngs of humanity, sentient beings. There are so many people out there, more people than we can possibly get to know individually. Now, what do we do with these people if we cannot get to know them? Well, for one thing, we can observe them. We can learn from their experience. If someone is doing something right, we can learn from that. And we can endeavor to do things the same way so that we can achieve the positive results that they have. Conversely, we can also observe when people have done something not so great and ended up with a poor result or sometimes no result. We can learn from that and learn to avoid doing the same thing or learn to do things differently so we don't repeat their mistakes. So that's what I mean here by saying that people provide assistance or cautionary examples. And it's not just people that are sources of learning. We can alternatively turn to books that record knowledge and wisdom, people perhaps who have long passed, but leaving their thoughts behind for us to learn from. Now, there's more. If you look back up in this column to the top 3 examples, you can draw all kinds of conclusions from what Lao Tzu implied, although he did not say specifically. So for instance, lubrication. We know wheels benefit from lubricants. In our lives, it is the politeness, courtesy, and considerations in our interactions with others that act as social lubricants. They definitely reduce friction. They reduce the squeaky noises. They ease our interactions with others. So what about the lid, the cover for container? What about the cover for windows for privacy? Locks to lock up a room? These can all be extended as well. Privacy and protection mean sometimes in life you do need to keep things to yourself or work on things on your own. There are things for which we collaborate with others, but then there are certain lessons that are completely up to us to internalize for ourselves. You have seen this to be the case. I think everyone has had that experience. So when all the pieces are working together correctly in life, we end up with optimal functionality in this lifetime. And that just means you are able to absorb the lessons that you are here to learn. And these lessons are for the continuing development of your spiritual refinement. Now, looking further up, you can also see additional correspondence between the examples in your life. For instance, the horses that pull the chariot, they correspond to the drive or aspiration within you. What I mean by that is this is the moment when you sense there's more to your life than what you have explored so far. You are feeling that, well, there's got to be more to it. There's an inner need, perhaps, to fully express your potential. Like, I haven't really done all I can or used all I can. I've got more that I can tap into. And because of that, you aspire to become a better person. That becomes your internal engine of spiritual evolution. So that would be matching the powerful horses that pull or draw the chariots, moving them across the landscape. So continuing on to line 7. So line 7 is what we start talking about the 2 most important lines, which are the last 2 lines in this chapter, lines 7 and 8. Line 7 says, therefore, that which exists is used to create benefit. I want to single out the first character there to talk about what that means. It's a common character, often used, and it's important in this case. That character is pronounced gu. So pinyin is simple, G-U, gu. And the meaning for this character, it can be translated as thus, therefore, so. And because of that, the last 2 lines can be shifted by 1 character to reveal the poetic structure. So the same two lines that you're seeing now at the top of the slide, line 7 and line 8, we can write them down here, but shifted by one character. And then we can note that the three characters in the middle are the same from line 7 to line 8 and in the same position. Now we figured out the first character, it just means therefore, thus. So we can look at the English part for the characters that are different. So right before the characters that are the same and right after, we have 4 characters that are different. We can look at the English part and we can see yo. That means that which exists. And then the last character of line 7, li, is translated as benefit. And then looking further down at line 8, the first character there, wu, means that which is empty, that which does not exist. And the last character there, yong, is functionality. So we will approach these last 2 lines, the most important lines, in a different way than what we typically do. First, we will work horizontally. So that which exists, yo, will be tied to benefit, li. And then in line 8, that which is empty is tied to functionality. So horizontally first. Then we're going to elevate our thinking to the next level and work vertically. That is, we will consider benefits versus functionality. That's the last 2 characters, li versus yong. Then we will consider that which exists versus that which is empty. So that which exists is yo, this character here. That which is empty, wu, this character here. So we're going to be working vertically to compare and contrast those 2 characters. So to summarize, we're going to start horizontally this way, and then vertically this way, and then vertically this way. So that is the plan for us to explore these 2 most important lines in the chapter. And so now we're going to start going across horizontally to consider yo with li, that is, that which exists and benefit. So starting with yo. So the pinyin for this one appears to be you, but that's not the pinyin system. It actually sounds like yo. The meaning of this character is to have, having, there is, there are, something that is there, something that exists. And in this context, having something points to existence, specifically material substance, material existence. And then let's talk about li. So the pinyin is simple, li, li, and the meaning of positive benefits, particularly in the material world. So specifically what this is saying is that to have something, for something to exist, is a benefit for human beings living in the material world. This is the yang side. And I want to take a moment to remind everyone that in the yin and yang symbol, the yang side is visible, that which is active, visible, material, manifesting as reality that we can see and touch. It's the overt. Whereas the yin side, the complementary side to yang, is unseen, immaterial, intangible, passive, things that we cannot necessarily see or touch. So the yang side is active, and the yin side is the inactive or receptive principle. So keep this in mind. It's the yang side. We're going to be going back and forth between the two sides. Now, having explored horizontally in line 7, we also want to do the same thing in line 8. So the first character there, 无, the meaning is to have none, to not have, to be lacking, to not exist, to have non-existence or emptiness. Not having something points to the emptiness of it, the lack of substance. This corresponds with 用. And I know that when it's written like Y-O-N-G, people may think that it rhymes with gone, but it's the O sound, 用. And the meaning for that is functionality. Functionality in terms of what it does. What is the usefulness associated with it? This points to action, purpose, not necessarily something that we can touch, but perhaps it is even more important. So if the previous line, line 7, was associated with the yang side, then you can probably guess that this other side, line 8, will correspond to the yin side. The yin side is about movement, change, utilization. So for instance, the wind that is unseen but turns the windmill, and the windmill in turn can be harnessed by human beings to do useful work. So the functionality side, the utilization part of it, the intangible, the concept of work and functionality, that is the yin side. Okay, so now to go a little bit further, as I mentioned, we're going to be doing the vertical part of it by starting with benefits and functionality. So starting with the benefit, first I want to bring in the examples used by Lao Tzu. And as a reminder for all of us, I want to bring in the yin and yang symbol. And then I want to compare this with the functionality. So first, remember that having these things, for these things to have physical manifestation, material substance, that is the yang side. So it's on the left-hand side of the slide. The right-hand side is a functionality of it. And let's go through them one by one. For the wheel, we know the use of a wheel is to rotate so the carriage can move and serve the purpose of transportation. That is the functionality. It's good, it's beneficial to have a wheel, but it's better to apply the functionality of that wheel for a particular purpose, because there's more to the wheel than just having it. You want to be able to use it. It is similar with a container. It's good, it's a benefit to have a container, but then let's talk about functionality. We want to use it to hold things such as food or water for consumption or utilization. There's more to it, more to the cup or container or bowl than just having it. You want to be able to use it to hold things. And then the room. Yeah, it's good to have a room, but what if you have something but don't use it? Then it's the same as not having it. So the use of a room is to access its space to work, to rest, or otherwise serve the purpose of living. You may want to have things in there that you store in a room. You may want to have a table in there so you can get some work done. Or perhaps there's a sofa where you can hang out and rest, and so on. Many different ways to utilize different rooms that we have around the house. Okay, having done that, now we elevate our thinking, taking the examples cited by Lao Tzu to look at them as aspects of our lives. So these represent different aspects, like, for instance, the wheel represents transportation. We need to move around in the material world. Transportation is an important aspect in terms of functionality of our lives. Then, what about the bowl or the container? We all need to consume food and drink to sustain the body. So containers are very useful to us. This is another aspect of life that's also an important functionality, the sustenance to maintain our physical selves. And then finally, functionality of the room. We need a space, we need a place where we can work and a home where we can rest. So buildings and rooms become crucial. So here's the main point about all of these. It really suggests that Lao Tzu did not come up with his examples at random, not just pulling them out of whatever comes to mind. It seems he meant for us to understand the examples individually and then consider them together in the context of our lives. So, having built that as the foundational discussion, we're now ready to go to the next level to talk about existence and emptiness. This is vertical again, but now we're dealing with the character for existence, yo, and the character for non-existence or emptiness, wu. So working vertically now. Now there's a lot that we can see into this. We can talk about this, starting with the concept of balance. The yin and yang symbol is often seen as a symbol for balance. And that is certainly a valid interpretation. We can and should apply the idea of balance to having versus not having, substance versus emptiness. Here's what I mean by that. First, too much substance, too many things, we get clutter and obstruction. So the whole idea that substance, meaning having stuff, creates benefits is true. At the same time, we also know it is possible to go overboard and have too much. What happens then? Well, the excess turns into a detriment for us. This is most easily seen in clutter becoming a negative factor in life. And that is because it obstructs or gets in the way of your other life functionalities. And please note, this applies not just to physical clutter that get in the way, but also mental and emotional clutter. Your mind, your emotions can be so full of things that don't serve you, but drag you down. They become obstructions too. Then the extent of their obstruction is proportional to the extent of the mental or emotional clutter. Now, what about the other side? We're talking about too much substance on the left-hand side. What about too much emptiness? So emptiness is a lack of resources. So one aspect of it is that we have nothing to work with. In this material world, we need a certain amount of resources to work with. Now, as Lao Tzu pointed out, central emptiness is crucial, like the wheel, the container, the room, but that doesn't say that even more emptiness will be better. For instance, if we have a wheel that is empty of spokes, well, it cannot function as a wheel. A room that is empty of walls cannot serve as a room at all. And in a similar way, humility, when taken to an extreme, becomes self-degradation. Even though we apply the example of the wheel and the cup to life, and we say that we should proceed with the mind, with the heart that is empty of self-centric, egocentric notions, we know it can be overdone so that humility becomes debasement. In a similar way, we want to keep an open mind, we want to be receptive, but if that is taken to an extreme, then we verge into the realm of gullibility. We become vulnerable to misinformation, erroneous information, or disinformation. So, in terms of learning, if you are lacking foundational knowledge, then you have no basis to build additional understanding. So same problem. Spiritually, if you have too much emptiness there, a lack of purpose in life, you wander aimlessly, and you may not even realize the need for a direction. So there is a lot that we can say for a scenario where there's actually too much emptiness. How do we bring it back into balance? So a balanced wheel must have spokes. A balanced life must also have the spokes, your support system. And in the case of a room, the walls. The room needs the walls to be a wall at all. So we need to have our resources. We need a certain amount of substance, material things. So one important part of the Tao is the gathering of resources. This is the reason why there is nothing wrong with the acquisition of wealth in order to be, for that wealth or resources to be utilized for worthwhile functionalities in life. What the sages speak against is the hoarding of wealth, the hoarding without the utilization that quickly becomes negative. And this goes back to the example in chapter 9 of the Tao Te Ching that speaks to the room full of jade and treasures that you cannot prevent the loss, the damage, the theft, etc. Now, on the other side, when we talk about balance, it is equally crucial. It's not just having resources that are crucial. It's just as crucial to use what we have for optimal functionality, and ultimately, that is the Tao. And let me emphasize the right amount of emptiness. When you have balance in terms of emptiness, it means having the room, having the space, having the freedom in which to function, in which to explore. It creates more possibilities, therefore bringing you more experiences and more discoveries. And overall, you end up with more of an ability to make better use of your life. So this is the discussion on balance, using the yin and yang as a symbol for that. And I now would like to get to what is, in my opinion, the foremost or the most important point that Lao Tzu is making out of all these examples and extensions into real life scenarios. What is the ultimate purpose that Lao Tzu had to talk about this? To talk about 有, 无, existence, non-existence. So I'll start with the left-hand side, which is the yang side, the side that is visible, overt, existing. Having a physical existence by itself is a benefit to us. Or another way to say it, it's good or beneficial to have physical existence in the material world. Second point, the life that we have built in this world is what provides additional benefits. Our physical existence is what allows us to interact with one another here and now. At this moment, I am using my physical self to speak into a microphone, and the messages that I'm trying to convey from the Tao perspective is ending up in what you hear through this network that's been built. The network all over the world itself is a manifestation of existence or material things. Now, when I talk about interactions in the material world, I'm not talking about just you and I interacting, which we're doing now, but this is more than just human beings. We interact with the entire world, everything that is surrounding us, all the things that are in it, the myriad things, the pets. The pets are a quick example. It's not just fellow human beings we interact with. Some of us have pets, or perhaps we visit the zoo. Our pets become part of the family. So we want to be able to have that interaction as well. It's good to exist. It's good to be alive from the perspective of us, because we are all here right now among the living. Now the important part, the emptiness. So we have talked about the functionality of a wheel. It was designed for that specific purpose of transportation. We have talked about the functionality of a bowl, a container. It was designed for the purpose of holding things. And then room, the same. It was created and built for specific purposes. So then we want to cover this question. You exist in this world. You've been created as you were born. What were you designed to do? What functionality are you supposed to fulfill? What is your usefulness or purpose? So we want to explore emptiness in terms of functionality, in terms of utilization. And we cannot talk about emptiness without referring to the Tao itself. The Tao is ultimately empty. So the first point from Lao Tzu is something that we can immediately see. He's basically saying we have to combine our material existence, this lifetime, with the formless Tao to do what we are designed and created to do. Just like the wheel, rolling, moving forward. And this message has a special significance to the people who have dedicated themselves to the Tao. The Tao cultivators, the Tao practitioners following a traditional path. They draw power from their center, the source of their aspiration, and they count on the support of the Tao community like the spokes of the wheel, so they can turn, so they can function and share the message of the Tao to people out there who have affinity to the Tao. And one more point that Lao Tzu would make is about the crucial distinction between you and wu, between that which exists and that which have no physical existence. This is crucial because most people in the world are so reliant on their senses, physical senses, and therefore they understand the importance of having something, material things, substance, resources, but then they fail to understand the importance of emptiness, the room in which to utilize, the freedom in which to move. Therefore, most people tend to value the materialistic over the spiritual. You may have heard this from time to time about people who complain that how come so-and-so is so materialistic? Well, it's rather common. People also tend to value the short term over the long term. And typically, for that mode of thinking, it's the short-term profitability, short-term profits takes paramount importance over long-term benefit or happiness or good for the group, good for the community. It is only the few and the wise who balance their perspective to value both existence and emptiness. It is only those few who optimize both the short-term and long-term benefits. And they do this not just for themselves, but also for everyone around them. So the last paragraph that I have there speaks to purpose. Your life is a blank canvas. That is, the future that is stretching out ahead of you, it is blank. Blank pages yet to be written, blank canvas yet to be painted. The question then becomes, what would you paint? What masterpiece will you create from the future of your life? So this is the overall functionality question in terms of destiny or the sacred quest, the sacred mission in life. We've raised this question in different ways throughout this chapter, What is the reason for our existence? Why are we here? We know the wheel is designed to roll. The bowl is shaped to hold things. The room is built for living. So what am I built for? What is my purpose? What is my intended function? Let me share with you answers from the wisest practitioners that I have encountered in the authentic Tao tradition. They have been taught this in a tradition since ancient times that talk about how you and I, all of us, were all here for two main reasons. Reason number one, personal aspiration. This is internal, this is self-driven, self-directed. Personal aspiration in terms of Tao cultivation, it means we are here to work through the many lessons that challenge us to grow, to refine ourselves, to continue perfecting and developing the spirit, to become the best version of ourselves. That's the personal side. But that's just one of the two main reasons. The second of the two main reasons is externally directed. It's not just us. It's about everybody else. It's external. It's mutual assistance. That second most important reason is that we are here for one another. I'm here for you. You're here for me. None of us can succeed alone, but we can all succeed together. That is why we're all on this journey together as travel companions. Sometimes I get to lend you a helping hand. Other times I need a helping hand from you. So now let's bring it home. The last two lines of this chapter, Lao Tzu wrote, "Therefore, that which exists is used to create benefit. That which is empty is used to create functionality." I want to conclude our discussion of this chapter with a common scenario, just to illustrate the main point. Suppose a young person, a teenager, were to ask you, what is my purpose in life? Or what am I here to do? Can we use what we have learned from this chapter, what we have talked about so far, to answer the teenager in a way that will provide guidance? So the answer for the teen is not necessarily, well, you're here to do what you're good at. And it is not necessarily, you are here to do what you enjoy doing. The two may be the same. What you're good at and what you enjoy doing may be one and the same. That's oftentimes the case. If you think about how, if you have a gift, you're good at something, you enjoy doing it, they often come together. The better answer, the answer closer to the Tao, is you are here to help yourself and other people by using what you are good at and what you enjoy. That is the second part of the two major reasons for our existence, and it's tied to the first part. Of course, the teenager may tell you, well, I'm good at sports. I'm good at basketball or whatever other sports. Or I'm good at video games and I want to do just that for the rest of my life. And indeed, many teenagers may say exactly that, but we know there is 99.99% probability that the teenager will not end up as an athlete or a professional game player. Instead, the grown-up version of this teenager may discover one day a way to be of service to other people, to do something good, something positive to contribute to the world. When that happens, the lessons that his younger self, the teenager, the lessons that he learned from sports, like teamwork, timing, strategy, the lessons he learned from video games, like exploration, looking for clues, being persistent, keep trying, build up until your character can defeat the level boss or the end boss. Suddenly, all these lessons come together. They come into play to support his actual sacred quest in life, an important mission in life that he decides to take on. So this is the Tao about living your life's purpose. So to finish on that note, I would like to move on to the paraphrase. Here's the paraphrase of Tao Te Ching 11. As always, we want to demonstrate that we understand the message from Lao Tzu by being able to say it right back using our own words. So the first part is pretty lengthy. It's covering the three examples that we have discussed: the wheel, the container, and the room. So here is the way that I would like to paraphrase it for us. People often assume having things is good and not having them is bad. However, when sages examine life, they find having and not having to be equally crucial. For example, the wheel of a chariot needs its spokes to be a wheel. At the same time, it also needs a hole in the center for the axle, so it can function as a wheel. Similarly, when you form clay into the shape of a bowl, you must also create the space in it as holding capacity, so it can function as a bowl. It is no different with a room. You can erect walls to enclose an area, but you must also have openings in the wall so you can access the space and have it function as a room. So I think this is just a modern rendition of the exact same ideas that Lao Tzu has conveyed to us. Now we move on to the bottom two lines, which is the conclusion of this chapter. So this is about as I mentioned, the two most important lines: that which exists is used to create benefit, that which is empty is used to create functionality. It's the balance of the two, keeping everything in moderation, that is the magic of the Tao. So here's the paraphrase I want to offer for the final section. These examples make it obvious that you need having for the resources in life and not having or emptiness to make that life useful and meaningful. Thus, living the Tao is all about the optimal balance between the two. So that is our paraphrase. Lastly, we have the full circle to really wrap up our discussion of this chapter. In the last lines of Tao Te Ching 11, Lao Tzu says, substance creates benefit and emptiness creates usefulness. We link this back to the beginning and we see the example of 30 spokes of a wheel. So the message is clear. The 30 spokes shape the wheel, but the hole in its middle lets it function as a wheel. So here's what Lao Tzu is saying. He is charging us with the task to apply this to life. There is that word again, apply. Lao Tzu is saying we should utilize both substance and emptiness skillfully, each in its rightful place. Substance, the spokes all around the wheel. Emptiness, right in the center, letting it spin. Therefore, as a final reminder, that which exists is used to create benefit. That which is empty is used to create functionality. Ultimate message for us, we need both. We utilize both in balance. So we're getting close to the top of the hour, and we can end our discussion and our meeting today by going through the summary of chapter 11. Last time, we went through the summary for the first half. As you can see, it's about the wheel. 30 spokes support the structure of the wheel, and then the emptiness in the center, functionality. We map that to advise to the king. The king is supported by advisors and ministers. Those are his spokes. He has to be listening to them. He has to be empty of egocentric notions in order to rule wisely. Same for you. You are the ruler of your life. You're surrounded by a colorful cast of characters. So they provide you with advice, suggestions, recommendations from time to time. It is up to you to keep your heart humble so that you can listen to them, that you can be with them, and live in the Tao with them. So this is the summary for the first half. Let's finish everything by doing the summary for today. The primary lesson from Lao Tzu is all about existence versus emptiness, starting with existence. We have physical manifestation in this plane of existence. We live, we are here, we're doing stuff, we're making things happen. We're able to experience physical reality. Our senses, our mind, our ability to communicate with one another. So then remember the question. Contemplate this question. What exactly is our intended function? Not all of us as a group. What I mean is, what is my intended function as an individual? How can I help? How can I contribute? And how do we optimize that functionality? What are the specific ways I can use what I'm good at and what I enjoy to help me fulfill that functionality? Then we finish with emptiness. Emptiness, we initially linked it to humility, empty of egocentrism. Humility is a guide that leads us to the path of the Tao. The ultimate emptiness of the Tao is what we apply to life. And last point, your future is a blank slate waiting for your input. We all have this gift. We all have this ability to decide what it is that we want to put on, we want to write in the blank pages that are ahead of us in the book of our lives, in the new chapter. Therefore, the final bullet point here, it is time to let the inspiration of the Tao guide your hand. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.